All right, welcome everybody to St. Augustine's Business Entrepreneurs and Private Practice Student Special Interest Group. Thank you guys so much for coming tonight. We have an amazing guest and speaker for you, physical therapist, two-time whitewater rafting national champion, best-selling author of Becoming a Supple Leopard, formerly of Mobility WOD fame, currently of the Ready State fame. Please correct me if I've forgotten anything. Dr. Kelly Starrett.
You forgot great dancer.
Great dancer.
You're a great dancer and purveyor of all things puffy. Hey, how's it going, everyone? By the way, we need a new acronym because that is really awkward to describe what it is you're interested in. Independent practice, special interest group, entrepreneur business suite. We have a lot to get into.
It's a mouthful. It's a mouthful.
Are we?
Sure.
Is this a group of second years, third years, people who graduate? What's going on with this crew?
The whole spectrum, man. It's students that are interested in business and entrepreneurship and possibly opening a private practice. So, it's first years all the way through fourth years, and just people that are generally interested in business in general, because we don't have time to teach that during the curriculum. So, this group gets that outside of the curriculum, which is nice.
That's great, and let me say it's horse crap that we don't teach that within the curriculum. And then let me also say, what would you take out? So you're going to be in a position where you're going to need to pull something out to put something back in. Otherwise, we're going to have to make physio school 5 years long.
Yeah.
So these are the trade-offs we're going to get. So as we move forward in this next generation of leadership, we're definitely going to need to be thinking about what is it we value as a profession? How do we make those changes at the education level? Because we had very little of this and had to invent it from scratch. In fact, I had to call up the CAPTA and ask them, is it okay if I just mobilize people for performance? And they were like, sure, go for it. I was like, no pain, no insurance, but like they can't squat all the way and I want to mobilize their hips. And they were like, yeah, we've never heard that before, but that sounds good. So that's where we were not very long ago. We have slingshotted to here. So that's my point. It's very new, and we're gonna have to figure out what we're gonna ditch, if we can ditch anything, or do we have to just do these things on the side?
I think, my students will probably attest to this. I try to weave it into the curriculum just as I'm teaching, but I get down some pretty deep rabbit holes sometimes. So they got to pull me back in, I think. All right, Kelly, I've got a lead-off question for you here tonight, and the main reason we're here, pretty much, why should students or anybody really in general, especially in the DPT field, though, like you're just talking about, why should they consider entrepreneurship?
Whew. Good question. That has real clear answers. One is the way the current system is set up, and I also want to be very clear that we talk about the system and the fact that we are talking about an inherited system, an inherited model. 20 years ago, physio was battling for legitimacy in the medical profession. We were struggling to actually demonstrate efficacy and the results of good evidence-based practice. We were still doing diathermy and all kinds of strange things that are still maybe part of our Practice Act. And what you'll have to understand is that was the game we had to play to get to here. So we needed to be allies in the medical profession. We need to insert ourselves in because we understood that there was something really powerful here in musculoskeletal care and specialization in musculoskeletal care. The problem is that original system doesn't currently serve us in its sort of the depth and breadth of its entirety. We have, if you pin me down on an airplane, rarely do I lead with, I'm a physical therapist. It's complicated. What I say is, I was classically trained as a physical therapist. And that's the entree into thinking about what kind of life you want to have. So there are some of us who are going to want to engage in our profession in a way that ties us and really does handcuff us willingly to these big systems, pediatric cancer care, wound care, you're doing acute neurologic rehab, you're going to be in these settings that are appropriate. The problem is currently right now, and I feel like some of us can relate to this, or we're in the slipstream where we're beginning to suspect, even as students, that we may not be able to take full advantage of the things that we want to do and are capable of in the system constraints that have taken us this far as an industry. And I think that's really important. So you can say, hey, I don't want to be part of a PT mill where I'm treating 20 or 30 patients a day. Well, that's the way the system is set up currently. So if we have to ask ourselves, hey, I'd like to practice differently, or go into sort of more performance-based, or spend more time, or really get into the nitty-gritty of what it means to actually work with human beings and try to untangle the Gordian knot that is environmental health, and understanding someone's movement health, and understanding the way they're training, moving, that may not be appropriate in a 30-minute visit that happens every other week. And you cannot change that from within the system. So, some of the most important lessons I learned as a student, and I got stuck in just the gnarliest, externships. I was assigned to more skilled nursing facilities than anyone else in the history of my class. And but what I'll tell you is that my last rotation at Kaiser in San Francisco really made it clear for me that people were waiting 4 to 6 weeks for an evaluation that lasted 45 minutes, and then they were waiting 2 more weeks for a 30-minute follow-up. How can I possibly understand what's going on in that time frame and really have a good? And I can't. So what's happened is we've tried to take these complex musculoskeletal issues that are very context dependent, and then we've tried to apply a medical model to it. And so what I can say is that the reason you should give a crap about being an entrepreneur is that we have to create another model. And I'm not saying that the current insurance model is entirely bad. There's a time where we just need to get someone up out of bed and make sure that they're safe to go down the stairs. And hey, we're just managing this piece, and you don't need very much skilled intervention, and you're set, right? We just, here's some resources, comma. Then the rest of it is, if I have, we see people who are getting 4 visits for an ACL repair, like in these managed care facilities. How the hell is someone going to repair or heal or manage or normalize their movement in 4 visits? So these things, what we see is there's a type 1 error in the system. And the only way out for you, otherwise, besides going mad and burning out and dropping out and entirely, is to create an alternative reality. And that was something that we learned early on, that there was an opportunity to sort of reject the traditional model in which that was served and create a parallel universe. And I'll tell you, no one was doing this when we started. I really was. I mean, my parents thought I was crazy. Juliet, my wife's parents, thought I was crazy. I was the first person in my school to do this. And now it seems so obvious, but it wasn't obvious. And I fortunately had a facility already. In my second year of grad school, I went ahead and opened a gym, the 21st CrossFit in the world. And I don't recommend that to anyone. And I had a baby as a first year. So I had a baby. My wife was crazy busy as an attorney, and then we got a second student loan. I said, you're crazy busy as an attorney.
You said crazy, then pause.
She's saying I said crazy, then pause. Crazy, comma, crazy busy. I'm sorry, I meant 2 crazies. And what I'm saying is that the reason you should care about now is that you can create your own environment and create your own possibilities. But running a business is not the same thing as being a really competent physio or a really competent coach. And we spend a lot of time working with groups like Danny Mattei's PT Biz Mastermind, Movement Maestro. All these are our friends, because until we create enough sea change around this, where we can actually give people alternatives, who again can kind of select the kind of physio care they want, then the old model is going to continue to become more and more burdensome. And what we've got to do on the outside is create an alternative that is so sexy and so appealing that it makes the other alternative just look antiquated. So that is why you got to give a crap. And may I say that you can actually fulfill the promise of what it is we're doing, which is, for example, being transparent. I saw recently, I don't know, I was on Physiogram where someone was saying, hey, should we have, productivity incentives for physios? And I was like, that's just going to make physios, PTs party to this broken system. Instead, if you are working for yourself, eating 100% of what you kill, what you'll realize is that you're either a good physio or you're not, because people will not come and see you. You're either going to be the primary care musculoskeletal provider for this person, or you're not, because they'll continue to text you for months and months and months, and you'll take care of their family, or you have the alternative. So, I think, again, one of the reasons that we really like this independent model or some kind of hybrid model is that it gives you your agency to create side hustles. And suddenly what you realize is that your physio education is actually just the golden goose. And what you decide to do with all the other side hustles around that, I'm not talking about starting one business. I'm talking about a coaching business and a physio business and a consult business. Maybe you make products, and maybe you have a digital, and pretty soon what you have is an ecosystem around the golden goose, and the golden goose was your physio degree. So it's just the starting point. And you really, let me just say it again, are only limited by your creativity here.
Yeah. Amen, brother. That is exactly what's my thesis has been for the last couple of years, is that we need multiple revenue streams, all based off of the knowledge we get, not only in physio world, but everything we learned in grad school, because there's processes and organization and prioritization that we learn going through grad school, going through the process, and that can be applied then to business. I will say this, you'll be happy to know, diathermy is no longer on the NPTE exam. So yeah, we're moving in the right direction, slow and steady.
We weren't allowed to even plug in the diathermy machine at school. They were afraid it would kill someone or burn up the building. So they were like, so we just only did sham diathermy.
Yeah.
And those of you who haven't even had the experience of that, it's just a gigantic magnet. It actually makes sense. It's not too different than PEMF. You just cook the skin from within inside. It is interesting. We're really in an interesting time. I was asked to speak at Graham Sessions this year by Steve Anderson, and I got COVID instead, which was less of a fun experience for me. But what I wanted to talk about at the Graham Sessions was that we have a gigantic opportunity to be the primary touch point for the onslaught of environmental health that's coming. So the public health landslide of diabetes and diabesity and obesity and depression. I mean, we could be the sort of the glue that starts to put those things together. And as a profession, we are very, very poorly prepared. Greg Lehman used to take me down on the internet because I was talking about sleep and how sleep was so important. And he was like, yeah, it's not that important. And then turns out, of course, sleep is important if you're talking about pain modulation or resiliency or not burning out as a young PT entrepreneur. And I'll ask all of you right now, how's your sleep going? You guys killing the sleep game? I see smiles there. Aaron, you're snickering because you know it's true. So, what we're going to have to become better experts at is all the ancillary issues. What do you mean sleep's not in your practice act? And we can't just give lip service to it. We need to become experts in the care and feeding of human beings, from non-exercise activity to activity modulation, all the way up to talking to people about what they put in their mouths and how they downregulate. All of that is in our practice act. And if you don't think that you're prepared for that, then you're not prepared to touch anybody either. You know what I mean? So this is a real opportunity for us to really get ourselves in the mode of what the biopsychosocial model really promised, which wasn't just pain-splaining, but rather helping people change their behaviors so they become people again. Because right now, it's not going so well. I mean, let me just run this past you. Fewer musculoskeletal reports of injury and pain? Nope. Number one reason why people go see a doctor. How about child suicide? Up or down? Up. How about depression? How about opiate use? How about alcohol use? How about back surgeries, knee surgeries? Choose something you give a shit about. Women's ACL risk in high school sports, and you get an F, and you are inheriting that F from my generation. You're welcome. We're giving you that F. So, what we really have to look differently and this is a difficult quantum change in our thinking, is to ask, how is it going? Because I like to ask this to these PT groups. I'm like, how is our current system serving our general populations and our communities? And what I've come to believe more and more is that it is a communitarianism-based system. If you want to radically change the world, TikTok is not the place to do that. It's a very confusing place. The place to do that is radically in your community, where you become such a powerful agent of change that someone else wants to talk about what you're doing in another community. So, go out there and be radical in your community where you can actually help people untangle sort of some of the suffering that means to be human. And suddenly I'm like, oh yeah, you need to take the bow of the voting softball. You thought this was PT school? No, no, no. You're going to have to get into the nitty gritty, and that means become experts in all these things.
Yeah. Well put. Well put. That's actually a great lead into my next question. Speaking of mindset shifts, what kind of mindset shift needs to happen in order to become a successful entrepreneur?
Well, start this way. You're already running a book of business in any place where you find yourself as a physio. So if you're working in a hospital, these are your patients. They don't belong to the hospital. They're yours. These people are now in your care. You're taking them on. And ultimately, even if you're working like an outpatient orthopedic practice at a hospital, they would be like, you need to talk to my mom or my brother or so-and-so. And so from day one, I always had the mindset that I was building a community and starting to serve and creating a network through my evangelized patients, my clients that I was working with. That was how I have never advertised ever. And I recognize that it's useful to be first in the space. It's useful to be around before there's social media. It's useful to be around when, YouTube is barely a thing. But, always I was booked to the max just because I really went out of my way to take care of my patients. And so the mind shift is every person you interact with is your marketing, is your business, and making those radical believers where someone's like, yeah, I saw this person 2 or 3 times. And then we couldn't wrap their heads around it. They referred me out to another physio, or they referred me up the chain. Like, I've never had that interaction before. And so, when you kind of go in with that mindset, it really changes the game. The other thing is really asking, like, it's about who owns your time. Are you going to own your time or not? We charging $100 or $150 for a session seems outrageous, and that's like 10x what PTs are getting paid. And you could see, 15 people a week, 20 people a week, make a good living, pay your mortgage, and have 20 hours a week to hustle. So remember that the burden of this care is that you are willing to take on all the responsibility, all of the overhead, all of the risk, and you get all of the reward. And so that starts from day one, which means networking, building allies, friends, having an inner circle of people saying, how are you solving this? What do you think? Because really, you can't do it by yourself. If the lone wolf practitioner, Baker, you just can't go out into the world and be like, I'm Baker. You really have to be in a group, and that group can start from your physio school and start to share good practices, what you think is best practices, and resources. You don't need fanciness. You need an open room. You need a table, and then kumite. Like, the insurance for an independent physical therapist is so cheap because the risk of you actually hurting someone is very low. And so you can have this insurance to support your practice for almost pennies. And we recommend all of physios to have that personal liability insurance wherever they're working, just so that you're always covered. So just keep that in mind. I think that the mind shift is you're always starting now, you're building a repertoire, and 2, you're going to need those people around you because you can't do it by yourself.
Yeah, I like to kind of try to tell them on their orientation, networking starts now. I mean, it should have started a couple of years ago, but now's the second best time. And it literally, your professors, your classmates, your CIs, people out in your community, all of those people are going to be part of your story and your journey. And so that network becomes huge. And I think
we went through, like, I think a lot of physicists, you write letters, and they teach you how to write like cover letters, and you apply for these jobs after you graduate. And I was like, I already had 3 job offers, and I was like, I'm not working here. Like, no way. This place is dump. Like, I went out and set out to set relationships with the place I wanted to work as a first-year student, because again, there was no other options. So just be keeping in mind that you're already putting yourself into placements and sort of already imagining what that looks like, whether it's a CrossFit gym or a women's health group or something. There is something there, but you should already, when you graduate, you should have a plan. And it might not be perfect, but you're working in that direction and people know that you're very interested in being part of that system. It's not like prove yourself as a student and maybe you get picked for the kickball team. You can't rely on that.
No, I mean, thinking back, every job that I've gotten has been because of a network situation. I didn't really apply to any job. I basically networked my way into every job offer that I can remember. So
we had, my first year of physio school, I was like, we're all physio students, right? I was like, why don't we all just stretch people doing marathons? There's like 1,000 marathon fun runs here in California. So I created a student body leadership position called the Ministry of Altruism. And what we would do was go out and just volunteer our time. And like anyone needed to volunteer, I created and organized the volunteer and put us out there. And was a great experience. And we actually had to go out and interact and sort of sell ourselves and get practice in that. And it was useful for me because I was already a coach and a teacher. So it was really simple for me to organize that. But for some of my fellows, it was the first time they'd actually had to be responsible for a time and a place and a thing. And then secondarily, it was already me marketing myself to San Francisco so that when I opened up the gym, suddenly I had all the runners and all the triathletes and everyone is in there like, hey, are you a physio now? Can we take your money now? So we can take our money. So just keep that in mind that I think I tried to be of service to my community early on because I knew that is actually the long way and the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we've gotten this conversation rolling a little bit. I'm going to hand it over to the B.E.P.P. SIG president, Jose Diaz. Jose, take it away, man.
Thank you, Dr. Phil. Thank you, Dr. Kelly Starrett. Definitely an honor to kind of share the room with you virtually. And I kind of just have a quick question. You touched on creating our system, creating our own alternate reality away from, the current insurance-based model. So it just sounds like, we're graduating school, which a lot of the content for me speaking is, new stuff. Getting ready to be a business owner or a practice owner out of school, a lot more new things, new experience, a lot of doubts. I'm just curious if you have any tips on how to combat, imposter syndrome, if that's something you've done throughout your career.
Again, the first thing, no, I have a gigantic ego, so I never had imposter syndrome. What I will say though is it's completely reasonable to say, hey, I'm probably underprepared from physio school to manage all the complexities. So early on, I'd be hyper transparent about my abilities and skills. And I would say, hey, expert clinicianship is actually a conversation between the two of us working this out together. And I would say that, and every single person was really an N of one and a small experiment that I ran. And I had the added benefit, again, remember, I left physio school and actually went to a P.E.P.P, right? And everyone's like, ooh, P.E.P.P. So I was in Kaiser and I was like, wait a minute, Kaiser is just a big glorified P.E.P.P where I can see a physician and a physical therapist the same day. And here in California, here in San Francisco, there was a practice that was attached to a very good orthopedic practice where someone could get an MRI, get an X-ray, radiograph, be evaluated by a physician, and then talk to a physical therapist and either book for surgery or book for physical therapy the same day within like 2 hours. And one of the reasons I chose to work there was they saw all of the surgeries that I hadn't seen. So I was still an independent, still running my little side hustle at my gym, still open on the weekends, still doing that thing around. So I had a full-time job at my gym. I would coach before, I would coach in the evening, I would coach on the weekends, and then I ran a full-time practice out of this clinic, the sports orthopedic clinic. But what was great there was I got a chance to see meniscus allograft transplants, and I got to see every brostrum and every surgery, and it was nice to manage a few total knee replacements before I was asked to do that on my own. So keep in mind that no one is saying that's all or one or nothing. What I would say is, if you need to go get a job because you just need to practice a little bit and just get your feet for a second and see what it's like, go do that. And at any point you can be like late, they will fire you at any reason, for any reason, at any time. And I'm not saying you should go out and then quickly burn the bridge, but don't abandon the side hustle early on. And so, as I realized early on after my first year, where I was the top grossing physical therapist as a first year, in terms of the people I brought in, the surgeries I brought in, I made those people $450,000 my first year as a physio student. And I was like, they paid me $80,000 and I made $450,000. And I think I already own a gym and can probably do a lot of this on my own. So I transitioned really quickly because I was like, the finances weren't there. Early on, you're going to work at an unsustainable pace. There is no work-life balance. You're taking this on. This is okay. It's not forever, and it can't be forever. And you will burn out, or you'll recognize the signs of burnout. Again, I was running a gym. I was coaching a national team. I had a baby. I was a grad student, and then I was sitting in a communications lecture about burnout. And I just didn't come back after the break. I was like, I don't need this. And they were like, you can't leave PT school. And I was like, well, I'm a case study for burnout right now. And so, I got in trouble for that. And meanwhile, I worked at an unsustainable pace because I knew that this transition back to owning my own time would support itself. And what I would say is there'll be a time where you have very little in this bucket and a lot in this bucket. And then as you transition, ultimately you can just do coverage days for someone else as you build your own practice. So you don't have to go from 0 to 60. And in that time, you'll continue to find your voice and practice. And our Julie Pride, who was this PT PA who did our orthopedic imaging very first semester, said it's going to take you 5 years to know what's going on. And what I was like, bullshit, I'll do it in 2 months. But the point was, it takes a second to just integrate and practice. And the thing you need to do is start talking to people and putting your hands on people and just running the program. It really is that simple. And then until you've seen 100 people, you won't know what treating 100 people looks like, but you will in the short run. So that would be my answer to that. There's no imposter syndrome. It's okay to be a new PT. And what I would say is, I know I'm a new grad, but I have all the latest research and techniques, and those old, broken, beat down people don't even know what's going on. And they'd be like, oh, I'm coming to you. One of the things I would suggest is, if you're not already working in the community or volunteering in the community where you want to find yourself, ultimately change that. I think you need to go volunteer or coach in your gym or be, volunteering at a clinic. And even if it's 1 day a month on the weekends, or just you're starting to imagine that and insert yourself into the community that you imagine yourself being part of someday, that's as simple as it is. I'm a huge fan of ultimately being a coach. That means you could teach yoga, you can teach Pilates, you can teach CrossFit, you can teach Olympic lifting. It doesn't matter. But having a movement system in your brain where you know how to start a class, run a class on a skill, work on a thing, improve a thing, end up wrap, sell the class, that's actually what physio is. And then we just started dropping either physio or coaching on top. And you couldn't tell when we had 7 physios on staff, we couldn't tell who was the coach, who was the physio, because both, the Venn diagram is so high there. So again, if you're worried about the imposter syndrome, make sure that you're already working with people and coaching movement with people. I think that's really where one of the biggest opportunities is in physio school, is to be, making sure that you can speak Olympic lifting, you can speak kettlebells, you can speak Pilates fluently, and you know what running looks like, and yoga and every other thing. I mean, you have to be fluent in these things. And I don't mean like a dilettante. I mean fluent. It means you need to go jump into some yoga classes and really understand what the hell's going on. Otherwise, you're going to miss the opportunity to be able to speak people's movement language.
Got you. I got you on that. Totally agree. And honestly, if anyone, this is an open format, so if anyone wants to chime in with questions, feel free to ask or drop them in the chat, guys.
These are my real calves. I don't know if the internet says they're implants, but they're not. They're just gigantic, my calves. So I just want you guys to know that's a lie. It's an internet lie.
Dr. Starrett, I just want to, smash it.
No, you got it. You got it.
Cool. Dr. Starrett, first and foremost, I want to thank you for your time. I'm a huge fan. I've been following you for a nice chunk of time now. And I guess one of the quotes in the Supple Leopard that stuck out to me was, you mentioned the fact that the problem societally today is that we prioritize task completion versus like all the steps in between. And one of the main reasons why that stuck out is because the example that you gave was like, the thing was like, hey, I made some toast, but I burnt down the entire house, but I made the toast. So like that had kind of stuck out to me in regards to like how I feel like it'd be optimal to navigate. But right now I own a personal training business, and I also had a baby while in PT school. I'm about halfway through. So I guess one of my struggles is, and it's funny that you brought up burnout, is like, did you have any tips in regards, because it's not like you obviously had a lot going on as well. You owned a gym, you also had a baby in PT school, and like, how did you kind of personally manage, like, what did your self-care look like while you were going through this process with everything you had going on? And
Yeah,
thank you for your time.
you're welcome. First and foremost, if those of you who have partners of every kind who are supporting you in this, I don't know, some of you are probably flying solo, some of you may have partners. If you have partners, they're the most important thing and resource. And you need to make sure that you're prioritizing taking care of your partner who has your back and is putting up with your crap. That's a big deal. And it's easy to mess that up and not really see the opportunity for what that is. Because you're like, oh, my partner is great, I'm sorted, I'm just gonna take care of this baby and do this entrepreneur thing. And what I'll tell you is, we were just out in South Carolina at a PT Biz conference, and Juliet, who's my CEO, and is the CEO, and she always likes to say she owns 51% of the business, is that we did a couple sit-down panels about working with your spouse, and it was horrific to see that if we're talking about first principles, how are your relationships managing? How are you managing your relationships? Are you nurturing those relationships? Because the physio profession has told us that, especially the students, that it is sacrifice, and it's drinking from a fire hose. I mean, the amount of time in PT school classes is unparalleled. It's unlike other grad schools where you go to class for an hour and then you have 5 hours of study. I was in class for 3 hours and then another 3-hour class. So the first order of business is making sure that you're sorted there. And then also recognize that you can't have everything. You cannot do it all. So at one point, my training was what we called the 10s, where I would do like 10 kettlebell swings and 10 pull-ups and 10 burpees at 10 p.m. for 10 minutes. And that was my training. And I was like, nailed it today. I'm elite. I was infamous for doing as many dips as I could on the parallel bars in between classes. I did handstands in the halls. I just tried to say, what does this movement practice look like? And recognizing that my fitness was not something I was going to prioritize. So I was going to say, hey, I am now the example of the modern working person who's coming into this and is really struggling to make these behavior lifestyle changes. So right now you are basically all of your patients wrapped into one, where you're like, hey, why don't you meal prep? You're like, why don't you go to hell? Because I don't have time to meal prep. I'm just glad to have this protein in this cup, right? And that's a true story that that happened to me. Someone was trying to break me over the coals for that. So what I'll say is, again, first principles, control what you can control, and then shake the rest. So maybe this isn't the time to be drinking. Maybe you're going to get your 10,000 steps today and do a breathing practice on the way in to the walk. And you nailed it. And then you sat on the plinth in the back instead of sitting on that stool, or you sat on the ground. And again, you just snuck in some pull-ups when you got home late at night. And then you have to check the box and say, that's good enough. And when you take care of those first principles about sleep, you're going to eat the best food that you can afford, right? I recognized in PT school that I could really start to control my diet. And so I started doing a lot of play, because that was the one place where I had some agency. And then, the rest of it I had to let go. So, again, this is, because you're a physio does not mean that you don't obey the same rules of every founder of every company. And everyone works at unsustainable levels for a while, but you have to have a plan out of that. And you have to be able to recognize, what's going wrong. And let me suggest to everyone here, if there is a partner, a special person in your life, you schedule once a week this thing called a feelings meeting. So Juliet and I have it on the calendar, and it says feeling meeting. And the only rule is you can't be defensive. And sometimes you need to have a drink between you. And you say, how am I doing as a partner, hun? let's talk about our feelings. And so we actually started to schedule these feeling meetings. My wife was really good talking about her feelings, but weirdly, I had to practice that. So, the feelings meeting reoriented us about what was going on. And I don't know if you've seen breakups in physio school, but, it was like weddings flamed out, marriages flamed out, boyfriend, girlfriend flamed out because the stress and the pressures are so high. And you all are A+ students. And I know that, you need to be able to do that. And I also, made the commitment that I was like, look, I'm not going to study to get an A in anatomy. I think that is a colossal waste of time. I'm going to study to get a B or B+ in anatomy. And I'll be really good at all the things that really, really matter so that I can take care of my family or do what I need to do. So hopefully that gives you some, again, I would come back to first principles on this and just say, are you sleeping? Are you talking about your feelings with your spouse or loved one or partner? Are you doing some kind of movement practice, or are you lying because you're turning around and saying that to someone? I don't know why you have chronic pain, but you don't sleep and you're eating like shit and you're hyper stressed and you don't move. And, what did you expect? Your tissues are pissed. You guys have all heard the P.E.P.P, the piss poor protoplasm. Well, what that's about is we've got to get these first things first. And again, it comes back around. So again, I'm not saying you need to do more. I'm saying you should do less and you should do it better. Really, really, really simple on that.
I appreciate that. And my wife actually heard the first part of your answer and she was going, the entire time you're talking. So although I might be in trouble, I still appreciate your answer. Thank you so much.
You should be in trouble. You can do better.
Dr. Starrett, thank you for your time. I had a question about when you first started, how did you decide who you were going to outsource and what skills you were going to learn and try to figure out on your own? Like, did you do your own bookkeeping, or, did you market yourself on social media? Did you clean your own practice? Like, what did you do and how did you decide what would you do?
Well, I had a head start because I had a really successful gym, and my gym was netting me about $100,000 a year by the time I got out of physio school, which was very nice. That was, what I mean? So I already had a place. I already was taking care of some of those issues. What I would say is, something we told everyone else, for example, at this PT Biz mastermind group, was everyone's looking at like, can I offload my bookkeeping? Or, I mean, if you have a PayPal account, it's not that complicated to do your bookkeeping. It's pretty simple to keep a paper book. You can easily do that. There are great systems now, but don't feel like you need to jump into like, what is the optimal tech stack to express myself correctly? Those are things that are going to come and change and are in constant variation. Should you have a basic website where people can learn about you and find about you? Yes. Could you, I started a blog back in 2005 where I took a picture and wrote something about it. And I just did that a little bit at a time. When we started the original Mobility WOD, I made a video a day for a year, and I didn't do it for anyone else. I actually told one person about it. I did it for my patients so that I could create a library where I could refer them for more education, or I could say, hey, I want you to watch, video 26 and video 44 before you come back next week so that we can actually, we can use our time together. Juliet made the point at this group. She's like, you might be better off hiring a housekeeper once a week or once every other week, just to deep clean so that you can actually have some downtime. Maybe if you are killing it, you should get some of those pre-packaged awesome ice age meals. You don't need to do that. There's some things that you could do. If you haven't read 4 Hour Body or 4 Hour Work Week by our friend Tim Ferriss, that's definitely a good way of thinking about how can I unload some of the busy work so that I can really focus on the things that I want. But in the beginning, be prepared to clean a little bit. Be prepared, because this is, in 2 seconds, you will not be that person. In 2 seconds, it gets hyper complicated. And I think it's easy to come in with your, like, I need to spend this much money, and already you're in the hole that you've got to climb out of. What I would do is say, what's the minimum viable business I could hold? And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, look at this. I had a little extra money this month. I'm going to do that with this, or I'm going to reinvest it. So, probably illegally, I used a private student loan to finance my first gym. And they were like, oh, I see you have a first time using private student loan. And I was like, oh yeah, I just have some extra needs with the baby. And I went and bought rowers and bumper plates and dumbbells. And, the key here is that for a long time, we just used the gym as a way of building the gym. And so we would just put money back into the practice. Look, I don't know if you guys know this, but you're dirtbag students. You're broke. It's so sweet. In fact, you're negative broke. You're broke means you have no money. You guys actually owe money, which is even worse. So keep in mind that how eating fruits and vegetables and eggs and ground beef and rice, dude, you could do this for a long, long time where you can keep yourself in a simple, austere model. I mean, Juliet and I were professional river guides for a long time. That means we lived on a bus, we slept outside, we had no health insurance. We were broke kids and super happy. And so don't get trapped. You don't need a fancy way to sign in. You need a paper waiver, which is a very simple thing to do before you get Waiver King. And all of a sudden you realize that you're like, hey, I have a little bit more money. Boom, I can take this next step. And that reinvesting of that time, and that reinvesting maybe you have a coach, or that reinvesting is that you take a vacation with your spouse to recharge, or you hire someone to come in and cover for you so you can go on vacation. But really, I think we want to get sophisticated because you're seeing what evolved practices look like, and people will come not for the hand towels, not for they come because you are an incredible provider and maybe the only person who listened and really understood for an hour. And that reason is the only thing. Everything else is crap. And I'll tell you, we did this in a parking lot underneath the Golden Gate Bridge where I had a Connex container, which wasn't very sexy. We called the pain box. It was like one of those portable offices. And that was next to the other containers and the canopies that we had. And people came because they got my undivided attention and follow up for an hour. And we were able to work together. So I would say start there and then add that complexity. Because now for us to run the Ready State, we have a huge staff and multiple agencies helping us with. We have a person who helps us with advertising through the App Store alone. It's going to get complicated in a heartbeat. Enjoy the fact that you can live this simple life for a second, because you're going to be so successful that you will have to get complex. Go set up a table in someone else's gym. Don't even own that. Be like, hey, no problem. Can I rent this place for $500 a month? Oh, I can. Perfect. I saw 3 patients, paid my rent. Let's go. That's the dream.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I was like, oh, I need a lawyer and I need an accountant and I need a social media person. I need a camera. Yeah.
And there are plenty of people, even in our space, who are talking about just making social media posts. And really remember, you're making social media posts just for your clients so they can see their successes. You should follow Made to Move PT, Made to Move. It's some young clinicians who just bought a practice, and they're doing just a wonderful job of managing that. It's a young couple, but you can see how they use social media to talk to their community and talk to their patients, no one else. And I think, again, the social media we're like, we have to be global and I have to have 1 million followers. No, how many patients do you have? 500, you should have 500 followers. You know what I mean? Like, follow me. I'm going to give you this micro learning experience where we can celebrate and you can see what's going on. So just really, the good news is that this thing is so simple and so elegant, and you just need to turn on yourself and, be like, hey, can I make a video about your calf strain? I won't even show your face. And people are like, heck yeah, put me on social media. Then there's your post as you talk about it. So, again, you're serving your client base in the most austere, meager way, and then people will show up for you because you are the thing. There's no other thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Dr. Starrett. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Nice to meet you.
Just want to say thank you for your time and your presence. I have a question about residency, and your opinion is what I want to know, whether you think that would be beneficial for someone who is interested in becoming an entrepreneur.
I don't know if those things go together. I am a cis hetero white man. We'll just start with that. I'll just acknowledge that in the room, right? And I'll say that one of one of our best coaches, Sean McBride, came out of school and was like, I need to know a little bit more. I'm not ready. And he did a Kaiser residency right out. And then he was like, okay, I don't need that. I have scratched that itch. So if you're going to work in the system, that can be really useful because that can give you a skill set that is valued by the system. I would say that if I was going to set myself up as an independent entrepreneur, unless I wanted to work in a special population that really needed the residency skills, I'm not an OCS, and I have never found that my lack of being an OCS limited my ability to work across the spectrum of human performance. But if you really felt like, hey, I don't understand or didn't get this Maitland training, or I would like more advanced learning, then that is the great reason to, or hey, I'm just not ready to push the go on this yet, and I need to incubate. Also a valid reason. If you think that that's going to fulfill some need, that's a good indicator. If you're feeling pressure to do that because you need it to be an entrepreneur, you do not. In fact, no one looks past your name in terms of your credentials. They just don't. You're a PT, that's cool. Oh, you have a bachelor in PT, that's cool. Like, no one cares. Are you a doctor? Is this a doctor profession? Heck yeah. I never introduce myself as Dr. Kelly Starrett. I'm Kelly. Please meet me. Nice to meet you. And the formal title is the mark of socialization, so I can move in and out of these communities. So if that helps you move more elegantly in and out of these communities, then it's completely valid. And again, I'll just acknowledge the position of privilege that I have in this room, and that it's not all things to all people. We have a lot of entrepreneurs that we're friends with, and Juliet regularly, those people regularly point out that they're like, well, I'm going to just give them, my children don't need to go to college or to go to grad school. Like, law school's a waste. And my wife would say, that's not true for women. It is a different issue. And sometimes women in her position, she really felt like grad school and being an attorney gave her sort of social cred and a mark of professional socialization where people could take her more seriously. And that is worth thinking about for sure. But is it worth putting yourself into a freakish amount more debt? That's also something to think about. Is that, did I answer that sufficiently?
Yeah, I'll give you a bit more background on why I'm asking this question. So I started school. I'm in my 6th trimester, so I'm halfway out the door. I have 2, right? So I have my 7th try rotation and 8th try rotation and graduation. So I'm a residential student. I started right when COVID hit, so everything was online. So my thought process is that, okay, maybe a residency would be beneficial, not so much for the credential, but for the personal hands-on mentorship experience.
Love that.
And also, in speaking with one of our professors who was I think she said the director or coordinator of a residency program, she mentioned that, it's a year long, and that in that year, it can put you 4, 5, 6 years ahead as far as being able to handle the workload, documentation, being able to practice efficiently, those sort of things. And in doing that, sometimes you might have to commit to actually working for, that company for a year or 2. But by the time, you do your time, you might be better prepared instead of, going out fresh and, fresh off of rotations and having a struggle in a PT mill where you're doing 20, 30 patients a day. It might put you in a better position. At least me personally, that's what I
think you don't need to talk yourself into it. If that, you are a grown ass woman, and if that feels like the right play to you, I think that you've really made a compelling case. And remember, it's not either or. That you can be in this residency and on your weekends be killing your little private cash game, right? In fact, it can just be your side hustle. People are like, why you got all this money? You're a resident. You're like, well, because this is not the only thing I do. So, one of the things that is one of my favorite books is called Blood, Sweat, and Chrome. It's the story about how George Miller made Mad Max Fury Road. It's a wonderful listen on audio. And you'll listen to how crazy busy that person was and how he really took care of the people that worked with him to get this thing done. This collaboration, it's wonderful. But one of the things that he points out is that he was editing 2 movies at once, and he was starting to worry if he could do it. And he asked Steven Spielberg, and Steven said, hey, one is a vacation from the other. And that's actually one of the things I really like, is that your side hustle can be a vacation from your day job. And the day job can be a place where you're incubating and working, and it gives you time to think about your side hustle. And again, those things inform each other. So I had a physio practice and I had a coaching practice, and I would not be the clinician or the coach I am today if I wasn't doing both things. Think how they both related. So I think in this crazy COVID time, and the thing that, again, what did I do? I went out and got a really good job that, allowed my family to have health insurance. But I also knew the physios who worked there, and they were the senior instructors for the Maitland Australian, the MAPS program. So I dropped into a community of teachers and excellence where, we would mobilize each other on breaks. And, I was like, we were deep nerd. And that was really great for me because it got me into seeing how to manage some of those things. So I would say, however you want to do that, terrific. And I think that's, residency or not, I think that's a really good reason to feel like you trust your hands and trust your brain.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. And I trust you. Just remember this. I trust you. You know what you need, and I trust you. You're telling me that's the right case. That might not be the right thing for all of us, but I believe you.
Thank you. There's just so few people that actually do a residency, and you're an OG in the game. So just want your opinion about it.
I think it's very legit. My school was attached to the World Center for PNF at Kaiser Vallejo. We went back and forth. All those were my daily instructors. We had NDT instructor, like all of the manual superstar Australian instructors were my daily instructors. And so I felt like I caught this weird bubble in my physio clinic or my physio school, and like they all retired in a year or two after I left. And I got the most real PT education you possibly could. And again, it almost killed me at times, but I really felt like I was prepared, except for seeing those surgeries, because I wasn't seeing those in the SNF. So I went out and realized it was going to be on me to fill in those gaps. And then something that you asked, Nancy, part of the things that I realized afterwards is that I would go, hey, I want to learn more about this. I think this will help my practice. And so, or my understanding of things. So I would go out and seek out people who were doing something that kept me interested in the game or kept me involved or some new skill. But honestly, if you've had some good manual therapy and you know how to talk to people and you know how to squat, there's no secret squirrel technique mobilization on that facet joint that's going to change the world. It just doesn't work that way. What else? I'm just going on and on. You're all blind and you need a drink. I understand.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Sorry, thank you. Kelly, I'm a huge fan, huge fan. I had to start with that. You really inspired me to actually go to PT school, and I'm going to be.
I ruined your life. So sorry.
But I hope not. I hope you have it. But I really would love to understand and hear more about, and it's a little off topic from entrepreneurship, but I want to hear what led you to becoming an entrepreneur and why you decided to become a physical therapist, because it sounds like you had things somewhat figured out. You've met, obviously the love of your life before, and you've had a lot of good stuff happen to you before you had this huge motivation and drive through Mobility WOD, through the Ready State, through before people really saw you on the internet. So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little more about your story.
Sure. Sorry if I put everyone to sleep here. I am the same person I have always been my whole life. This is me, and it's a lot. And just put it that way. I started teaching whitewater kayaking to adults when I was 14. So I have been teaching complex motor skills, complex movement skills to adults very early on. And so extra, that's right. Thank you, Scotty. And what I'll say was that I used to paddle on the U.S. canoe and kayak team, and I became injured. And I had an overuse injury, a brachial plexus traction compression injury that made my right hand very weak and couldn't grip the paddle anymore. And when I started to go down this rabbit hole, I was very interested in training and nutrition. And again, I was already paddling on the national team. And I was given this experience where I played that athlete thing where I'm broken and I played the shotgun. Give me the cortisone, give me the prednisone, give me the, all the massage. Let's see if we can untangle this thing. And nothing worked, and it ended my career. And when I looked around, everyone was like, "Oh yeah, we knew that would happen." And I was like, "What do you mean you knew that would happen? Like that's madness. Like I had to go through this." They're like, "Yeah, it's a training experience." And I was like, meanwhile, I had no internal rotation. I couldn't breathe. I had asthma. I was a passive accessory breather. I was overextended. Come on, like the number of things that were, I probably ate like a 23-year-old jerk, So check all the boxes of things that, could go against me. So I become a kayak rep, and I'm traveling the world. I'm kayaking. I'm teaching kayaking. That was super cool, but not my life. And I met Juliet, my wife, at the World Championships in Chile, and I knew that I wasn't going to be this kayak rep in this field forever. I didn't feel like it was tying all my interests together. And I was out surfing at Ocean Beach, and I literally had a moment of satori. I saw all of this. I was like, oh, I have to go to physio school. And the only time I didn't hear that bell just driving in my head that you need to go to physio school, you need to do that, was after 9/11. I was like, maybe I need to be a PA. Maybe I can't do whatever things I want to do. And then that lasted for like 6 days. And I was like, nope, I'm a PT. I'm a PT. So my whole life was about getting to PT school and through PT school. And knowing that I'd already had this independence in business, one of the things that I don't know if you all can relate to is, and no judgment or shade, but you can go to a lot of practices and say to yourself, this is not the place or the life I would want for myself. Do you imagine living in this carpeted floor, hung ceiling environment and being stoked on your life? And if the answer is this is for me, then you should do that. But I went through how many different rotations and how many different shadowing days and exposures. And there wasn't a single place that I felt like spoke my language or treating the kind of people I wanted to treat or giving the kind of care. And so early on, I just knew that I was like, oh, I'm already comfortable with this risk. I already know how to do this. And so, that really, again, it was 2000 when I woke up and was like, oh, I have to go to physio school. And I was a geography major with like things like, chemistry that had expired, and I had to go through another 40 units to qualify for the PT program, working full time. So, the number of hoops to jump through, even just to get into PT school with the observation hours and hospitals, it's crazy what you have to do to get underpaid in this profession. So always in the back of my mind, I knew something like this was happening. I read this Outside Magazine article about Mark Verstegen, who is the founder of Exos, used to be Athletes Performance. And I read that a long time ago, like in the 90s. And I remember thinking, I was like, oh, this is what I need to do. I need to have an Olympic training center for non-Olympians. And I want to do this kind of performance. And I didn't know what that looked like, but I knew the kind of feeling that I wanted to have. And ultimately, I recognized a real opportunity to step in and improve the ball and how athletes are moving, how they were taking care of themselves, and frankly, uncovering some of the type 1 error thinking about who owns pain. Is pain really a medical problem? No, it is not, right? Why aren't these coaches dealing with these issues of position, dealing with pain? Why doesn't everyone know how to do this low-level stuff? I was, as a young physio, being like, man, this is some low-level, like, I shouldn't even be charging for this. You should be able to find this on the internet and fix yourself very quickly. So I just set up to bring people up to that conversation. And in the last 15 years, we've become a lot more sophisticated. Do I still nerd out on teaching beginners? Yes, I'm obsessed. I'm always obsessed. That's all I think about. My wife calls it knees outing, or I'll just drift off into space. She's like, you're thinking about like the foot or something, aren't you? I'm like, yes, I am. So I'm constantly in an evolution cycle. And what ends up happening is I think, oh, am I going to run out of this? And then the next iteration comes along, or the next opportunity to work with interesting people or do something cool. I'm physical therapist to 2 US presidents. President Obama was one of my patients, and I coached that guy for years. set up his working station. I got Biden ready for the, with nutrition and work. I was supposed to be at the White House like 2 weeks ago, but there's this war going on, maybe, so, I get to work. And, this is I think like Kanye, it's either Kanye or Jay-Z, but it's like, I want to do dope shit with dope people. And that is the thing. There is nothing else. Like, I just want to be around really fired up, stoked people doing interesting work. And it just turns out, I still think PT is that gateway for me. I actually, if I'm being completely frank and honest, I did not have big enough aspirations and dreams for myself about the kind of life I could lead, or the kind of experiences, or the kind of meaningful work that I could have. That's super cool. And it's bonkers. Raise your hand if you touched Thor's butt. Raise your hand if you taught Barbara Walters how to squat. Raise your hand if you blacked out in the back of a F-16. Be a physical therapist. You have no idea how badass your life can be. I'm just telling you, you get to do super cool stuff. Oh, you're with the Niners? Just turning over how the whole program evaluates everything. Oh, you're with the whole senior Army medical staff talking about how they change musculoskeletal care in the Army. Like, you just have no idea how cool it is.
I think
So
that's
hold
why
on to
we
your
have
butts.
you. That's why we have you on tonight, man. Is to show all those options and to show them dream big, man. Physical therapy is a great profession if you leverage it correctly.
That's right.
And there's tons of ways to leverage it.
And here's a couple things. I just have to say this. And I know you all have real lives. One is, I'm just going to swear here. Don't be a dick on social media. Like, don't do it. Don't punch down. If you see something you don't understand or something you don't like, ignore it. Just move on. You do not need to be like, well, it's not what I would do. There's no transparency in our model. Be as transparent as you can with everything that you're doing. The keyboard warriors will show you, like, they treat out of their house. They don't actually see people. They're just on the internet looking at research. I can't tell you how often that is the case by some of these masters who are working in, the gurus are working in big national systems where there's always a patient jammed onto their schedule, no matter what, no matter if they have good outcomes or bad outcomes. No one tracks these outcomes. So don't be a dick, be kind and generous. Continue to realize that you can never burn a bridge. You cannot burn a bridge. That your job is to plant seeds and be allies and help and raise all the tides. Those two things I cannot stress enough. On the internet, it's not real life. Serve the people that you're with. And then secondarily, just understand that you will come around. It is a small community, and you're building allies and friendships here for a lifetime. What else am I missing, Jay? What else would you say? She's saying we got to go. Thank you.
Well, hey, Kelly, thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it. I know the group has learned a lot from having you on tonight. And, hey, CSM's on the left coast next year. So hopefully we'll get to see you down that way at some point.
Well, this is what I'll say. I went to CSM once and did one of the big 3-hour lecture blocks. And there were like 40 people in there and had never lifted a weight. And I was like, these are not my people. And maybe the next generation is in, and you can come see us.
I was going to say, yeah, it doesn't have to be at CSM. I'm just saying CSM's out in California next year. All the best parts of CSM happen after the conference.
All right, I will, Chris. I will see you at Sandlot. Come see us. Come find us. We'll have a tent there. Lastly, my email is kelly@thereadystate, y'all. I'm a person. It's not like I want lots of pen pals, but sometimes you just need a voice, and you're like, am I crazy? You're not crazy. There's something about paying it forward. I reached out to all the masters via email, and they'll all email you back. 100% of them will email you back. So my wife says that I'm a person who's about to die because we have to go to dinner with our friends. So once again, everyone, thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Kelly, thanks so much, man. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night.